Hey, it's Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt leader. Welcome to this Words of Wisdom Wednesday as we take another look at leadership insights from the Bible. Now, whether you're a person of faith or not, the recorded history documented in the 66 books of the Bible spans 6,000 years of human existence, and it gives us some incredible insight into good leadership, bad leadership, great leadership, poor leadership, and the lessons we can learn from each. Now, we're in the book of Leviticus, known as the Book of the Law. Now, this is part of the Torah, the original 5 books of the Bible that are also considered the most important scriptures to those of the Jewish faith as well. But as we dig into this book of the law, many people, when they read it, they're like, it just gives me a headache because it's just rule after rule, road after road, regulation after regulation. Well, guess what? We have those in our lives, and we have those in business, and we have rules and regulations in society. Now, chronologically, and really to set the stage for where we're going today, in the book of Exodus that we just finished, Moses had led the children of Israel out of Egypt, out of slavery. They've traveled through the desert. They're now at Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. Moses has brought down the 10 Commandments. He's then met with God, and God has given him specific instructions, specific rules for right living. And that's really what we see in the book of Leviticus, the rules for right living. It is a series of instructions, obligations, and requirements for the children of Israel to be at peace with each other, to commune together, to work together, but also to honor their God. Now, applications for us today, you're going to see are applicable. While we may not be offering burnt sacrifices and we may not be doing some of the things that were documented in this particular book in the Bible, the lessons learned are applicable in our personal lives and in our professional lives. And you're going to see that as we go through the first 6 chapters of Leviticus in today's training. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to read all 6 chapters, and we're not going to be here all day. But I do want to point out and go through and look at 6 specific offerings that show up in the first 6 chapters of the book of Leviticus, because there's some very important insights into living in right relationship with other people that I want to make sure that we point out and that you get in today's leadership insight from the Bible. So let's get started. Leviticus chapter 1 begins to speak about the burnt offering. Leviticus chapter 2 talks about the grain offering. Leviticus 1 verse 3 says if the offering is a burnt offering from the herd or from the flock. And then the chapter goes on to explain in detail the steps required to make a sacrificial offering, a burnt sacrifice of an animal to God for a specific reason. Chapter 2, verse 1 says, when anyone brings a grain offering to the Lord, and then the remainder of chapter 2 goes in and explains the grain offering. Now, when we talk about the burnt offering and the grain offering, there's some important leadership lessons. Again, rules for right living that we need to pull from that. And let's dive in and take a look at those. Leaders must lead with excellence and good character. Now, you may think, John, that's a given, but we see this bared out in Leviticus 1, Leviticus 2. Again, remember, this is a book about rules for right living. It's about making sure that the welfare and well-being of other people are honored and maintained, and that the relationship of the children of Israel with their God, Jehovah God, is maintained as well. So leaders lead in that example, and leaders must lead with excellence. They must be individuals of good character, good morals, and good values. We see that laid out in the burnt offering, and that's what that burnt offering or that burnt sacrifice recommends. Leaders need to be individuals of exceptional character. They need to have good morals, and they need to have exceptional values. They need to know what their non-negotiables are and the hills they're willing to die on for what is right. Now, the grain offering represents the need for excellence and a heart of service. It's important when you go through and you read in chapter 2 about the grain offering, when the children of Israel would go and they would gather crops from the field, they wouldn't bring to God just a portion of what they gathered. They were instructed to take the very best of the fruits or the grains or the crops that they brought in and give those as a thanksgiving offering to God for his provision in their lives. We saw the same thing in the burnt offering, that they were to bring an animal without spot, wrinkle, or blemish, no defect. Again, excellence in bringing what you bring to God. Now, think about that in our interactions with other people. If you are working for an employer, that employer wants excellence from you. He or she wants you to give your very best to the endeavor that you've been tasked to do. If you are a leader, if you're a business owner, if you're a leader of a team, if you're a leader of an organization, you want the very best from your people. You don't want them to give you half-cocked, mediocre, lackluster, average performance. You want them to step up and you want them to give you the very best. It's like an NFL team walking out and getting ready to play the Super Bowl, and the players on the team don't give their very best. They're not going to walk away with the trophy. For your team to excel, for your organization to excel, you want to make sure excellence is stressed. Good character, good values, good morals are all stressed as well. We see that played out and explained in these first two chapters of Leviticus. Now, at the same time, this grain offering also represents a heart of service. You had to go into the fields and you had to literally do the work to bring the crops in. The vegetables, the fruits, the grain crops, whatever they were, those things required effort. And the leader was right there alongside the other people doing the work to bring that in. Leaders lead by example. And as a leader, you've got to be willing to do anything and everything you ask someone else to do, because leaders lead by example. Now, let's move on to chapter 3 of Leviticus, where now we have an opportunity to look at the peace offering, also called in some translations the fellowship offering. Now, again, I'm not going to read the entire passage, but I want to give you the excerpt at the beginning of chapter 3 and part of the final verse of that chapter. If your offering is a fellowship or a peace offering, this is a lasting ordinance for generations to come, wherever you live. Now, this particular offering, this particular symbolism, again, rules of right living, notice the importance that God placed on this with the children of Israel. It was a lasting ordinance. It was a rule that lasted from generation to generation, and no matter where they were living, this was a rule that was to be enforced and followed. Now, what was this rule and what is the application for us today? Let's jump in and take a look. We as leaders are in the people business, and we need to understand that, and that's borne out as we study this peace offering, or fellowship offering it's referred to in some other translations of Scripture. Because we're in the relationship business, we as leaders have got to prioritize relationship over anything and everything else. Now, I get it. As a leader, you've got products you've got to get out the door, you've got services you got to deliver, but here's what I can tell you. When you prioritize your people and you prioritize building a relationship with your people, we go back to the first point. When you build relationship with them, you can then demand and expect excellence in what they put their hands to do. Why? Because they see that you value them and you're in relationship. And when you're in relationship with someone, you want to do what is necessary to please them and meet their needs. This is important, and you need to get this, because as a leader, you've got to prioritize the relationship. When you prioritize the relationship and the people know that they are valued, respected, and trusted, and that you're giving them what they need to see success and prioritizing the relationship over the outcome, those people are going to give you the outcome that you desire. They're going to deliver exceptional service. They're going to build exceptional products. They're going to get things out the door on time, under budget, or on budget at best, and they're going to make sure that things get done and your organization shines. Now, there's a second aspect to this peace offering, and it's a reminder that you as a leader have also got to be a peacemaker. You're working with people, and at times people are going to disagree. There's going to be issues. There's going to be tensions that arise. And when it does, you as a leader have got to step into the gap and bridge the gap to bring the people back together. Leadership is about collaboration, working together, and it's about cooperation, being willing to work together and valuing and honoring each other. Collaboration cooperation. You as a leader have got to be a peacemaker so that collaboration and cooperation can work together. That means when people are at odds with each other, maybe the shipping department and the sales department are having conflict, you got to come in and be the person that seeks to reconcile and restore. Identify what the problem is and how you fix it, resolve the problem, but make the focus the relationship and strengthening and rebuilding and rehoning that relationship together. Now you're going to get the results that you want. Let's move on to chapter 4 and chapter 5 of Leviticus. Again, not going to read the entire passage, but notice in verse 22 and 23, when a leader sins and does what is forbidden in any of the commandments of the Lord his God, when he realizes his guilt, he must bring as an offering a male goat without defect. Now, verse 27, 28 of chapter 4 also goes on to say, if any member of the community sins, notice it's not just the leader, if any member of the community sins, when they realize their guilt, they must bring as an offering a female goat without defect. Again, going back to excellence, going back to what we've seen in the other points, notice how one builds on the other. But in chapter 4 and chapter 5, we see example after example. If a leader sins, the leader makes a mistake, intentionally or unintentionally, here's what needs to be done for restoration. If another member of the community does something intentionally or unintentionally, here's what needs to be done to restore relationship. Can you see how all of these attributes build together? Again, the purpose of rules for right living. So what do we pull from chapter 4 and chapter 5? Leaders take the lead in owning their mistakes, their failures, and their shortcomings. You know, President Harry Truman had a sign on his desk that said, the buck stops here. And he believed that when it came to mistakes, failures, and shortcomings, he had to take responsibility. When the team won, he gave credit to the team, but he took the blame when things didn't go as planned. Now, not only do leaders take the lead in owning their mistakes, their shortcomings, and their failures, they have to make amends with the people they've harmed as a result of making a mistake, falling short, or the organization failing to achieve a goal or an objective or an outcome. That's what we see represented in this sin offering. This sin word means to make a mistake or to fall short or to miss the mark. That's what we see in that word, and it's applicable in our everyday lives, at home, at school, in the community, and in the workplace. When we miss the mark, we've got to atone. We've got to make amends for that. So this sin offering represents the importance of personal responsibility and seeking forgiveness and reconciliation with others when we fall short, when we make a mistake, and when we fail in some way. Now, the important thing I wanted to pull out, and I pointed it out when I was going through those excerpts of the scriptures, this not only applies to the leader, this applies to every member of the team. Honesty matters. People matter. Integrity matters. And every single team member has to be personally responsible for themselves, their actions, their attitudes, and their words. And when they make a mistake, when they fall short, when they fail, they've got to own it and they've got to make amends. Again, the goal of Leviticus is rules for right living. As a leader, you're seeking cooperation, collaboration. Those two things together are important, but that means everybody on the team has got to own their mistake and point the finger at themselves, not at someone else. Don't make excuses. Figure out what happened, fix it, and move on. Again, remember, people focused in what you do. Now, let's wrap up by looking at chapter 6 and the final offering we want to look at, which was the guilt offering, also in some translations called the trespass offering. Again, an excerpt from Leviticus 6, verses 1 through 5. If anyone sins and is unfaithful by deceiving his neighbor, or if they cheat their neighbor, or if they lost property and lied about it, or if they swear falsely, they must make restitution in full. Add a fifth of the value to it and give it all to the owner on the day they present their guilt offering to the priest. Now, that's pretty straightforward. If you cheat someone, if you lie about someone. Essentially, what we saw in Rules for Right Living, documented in the 10 Commandments, we see bore out in this particular passage, Leviticus chapter 6. Here's the lesson we can pull from that. Leaders have got to teach and emphasize the importance of valuing people. Not only do we value people and seek to add value to them, we value what belongs to them. When we take something from someone else, we have borrowed that. It's not ours. We don't own it. And it is our responsibility to be a good steward, to care for that item. If we damage it, if we break it, if we lose it, we need to restore it and make it right. That's what this guilt offering represents, or trespass offering, depending on the translation of the Bible you may be reading. It represents the importance of restoration to the people that we have wronged in some way. If we lie about someone, if we make a statement of falsehood about someone, if we take something that doesn't belong to them, if we deceive them or manipulate them in some way for our own gain and their loss, again, we've got to go back to point 3. We've got to own it. We've got to make amends. But all this comes back to this important point of valuing people. Understand this. Every single person on your team, including yourself, is unique, individual, one of a kind. That individual person will never be created in another individual throughout all of eternity. Every single person that has ever lived and ever will live and is living today is unique, individual. It is a one-of-a-kind creation by God or nature if you're not a person of faith. So this guilt offering, this trespass offering, represents the importance of restoration and making sure that those we have wronged have been made right and they have been made whole. It's also a reminder that everyone deserves to be valued and treated with respect, not just for what they do for your family, for your school, for your organization, for your community, or for your business, but they need to be valued for who they are, regardless of how important or how minuscule their contribution may be. The person that cleans the toilets makes just as much of a contribution as the person that is selling $1 million to the company every year. Every single person is making a contribution, and that contribution needs to be recognized and acknowledged. But more importantly, that individual making that contribution needs to be acknowledged. People matter. And treating people with integrity, with dignity, with honor, and with respect matters as well. So let's wrap up and just go back through real quickly what we've learned today. Leaders must lead with excellence and good character. You as a leader need to model good morals, good values, and striving for excellence, being the very best version of yourself every single day and giving your very best effort every single day, because people do what people see. It is important that you also have a heart of service and that you be willing to roll up your sleeves and get right alongside the people that are working and doing the work and letting them see that you're willing to serve them and give them what they need to see success. And at the same time, step in and help if they're struggling and trying to meet a goal or an objective and they're behind. You rally the troops to get things done. Don't forget, you're in the leadership business for a reason, because you're leading people. Dr. John Maxwell says it well. If you think you're leading and nobody's following, you're only taking a walk. So if you're in the people business, prioritize people. And when you prioritize people, results are going to follow. You're going to get the outcomes that you want. Exceptional service, exceptional product. They're going to deliver. And when conflict comes, be the peacemaker. Seek reconciliation. Seek restoration. But you've got to model that first by owning your failures and mistakes. Lastly, don't forget, people are valuable. Therefore, value people. And don't just value people, value what belongs to them. Value their contribution and let them know that they are honored, they are respected, they are appreciated, and they are loved. And by love, I'm talking about the fact that you are committed to their welfare and well-being. Remember, Leviticus is the book of the rules for right living, and you've had an opportunity to learn several today that you can use in your personal and professional life. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed today's leadership lesson from the Bible. And if you're a fan of leadership, personal growth, and development, let me encourage you to follow me on two of my video channels, YouTube or Rumble. The channel at Be a Black Belt Leader on YouTube. It is Be a Black Belt Leader on Rumble. If you're a podcast fan, you can find me on Spotify and all the major podcast channels. Black Belt Leadership is the name of the channel. Now, if you are a person of faith and you love leadership insights from the Bible, let me encourage you to visit my website, beablackbeltleader.com. In the courses area, you'll find a free email series, The Top 10 Leadership Lessons from the Bible, where we take a look at 10 characters from the Bible and the lessons we can learn from each. And while you're there, be sure and peruse all of my free paid content. Sign up for my newsletter. Follow me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on all the different social media places I'm at. But while you're there, be sure and check out many of the books and resources I have available. Now, in the Contact Us area, you're going to find all my channels. You can sign up for my newsletter. Again, you can follow me on the video channels or my podcast channels. Those are there as a resource for you. And with that, let me remind you that you as a leader are leading someone somewhere every single day, even if the only person you're leading is yourself. So don't just be a leader, be a black belt leader and live your life with black belt excellence. I'm Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.